back to same English speaking. I hope you are all doing well and excited to learn something new today. If you are someone who want to speak English fluently, confidently and natural, then this lesson is for you. Today I am going to teach you how to think in English, which is one of the most important step to becoming a fluent English speaker. We all know how frustrating it can be when we have to stop and translate sentences, our native language, into English before speaking. It slows us down, makes us feel less confident, and often leads to mistakes. Would not it be amazing if you could skip that translation process and just think in English from the start? Well, I am here to tell you that it is possible. By following four simple steps, you can train your brain to think directly in English. And trust me, this will make a huge difference in how you speak. Before you start, don't forget to subscribe to Simple Spoken English if you have not already. This way, you would not miss any of our lesson it that will help you on English fluent English. Now, let's get into today's lesson. How to think in English. Stage 1. Thinks in verbs. The power of action words. The first stage of learning to think in English is to focus on verbs. Verbs are the action word in sentences. They describe what's happening. Why do you start with verbs? Because action is all around us. And if you can think about what's happening in English, we can start forming sentences in our heads more quickly. Let's take an example. Imagine you are walking through New York City, specifically in Central Park. You see people everywhere, all engaged in different activities. What are they doing? Some people are running, others are talking. You see a dog chasing a ball, and someone is feeding pigeon. These actions are described using verbs: run, talk, chase, feed. By observing the action around you, you can start thinking about them in English. This process of observing and identifying the action is something you can do anywhere. Whether you are standing at a bus stop in London, waiting at a traffic light, or sitting in a cave in Paris, there are always action happening around you. For example, on a busy street in Tokyo, you might see some people walking quickly, someone riding a bicycle, or a group of friends laughing. You can mentally note these actions in English: walk, ride, laugh. But where there's not much happening, you can still practice thinking in bursts by imagining scenarios or using pictures. For instance, look at a photo of a family picnic. What action do you see? Maybe they are eating, playing, or relaxing. Even when you are indoors, you can practice identifying action by thinking about doing different situations. Imagine you are in your kitchen, you might be cooking, cleaning, or washing dishes. Key practice tip: let aside 5 to 10 minutes each day to practice thinking in verbs. Pick a different place each day and focus on the action happening around you. As you do this regularly, you train your brain to think about action in English making it easier to describe what's happening in the moment. Stage 2. Things is noun. Naming the world around you. Once you have practiced thinking in verbs, it is time to move on to nouns. Nouns are words that name people, place, things, or ideas. Just like verbs, nouns are everywhere. Everything around you has a name, and if you can think of this name in English, you will be one step closer to speaking English, speaking fluently. Let's take an example from a different city. Imagine you are in Sydney, Australia, standing by the famous Sydney Opera House. As you look around you, see the building, the harbour, and many tourists taking photos. You also see a boat in the water and a few seagulls flying above. Each of these things is a noun. Building, harbour, tourist boat, seagulls. It is important to practice thinking in nouns wherever you are. If you are at a market in Delhi in India, you might see fruit, vegetable, spices, and vendors. These are all nouns that describe the objects and people around you. Even if you are just sitting in your room, you can look around and identify nouns. For example, you might see a table, a chair, a book, and a laptop. Another great way to practice thinking in nouns is to describe what you are carrying with you. Maybe you have a phone, some keys, and a wallet. If you have practiced in naming these objects in English, it will soon become second nature. Over time, this will help you think faster and more clearly in English. Key practice tip: spend a few minutes each day naming the objects around you in English, whether you are outside, at home, or even traveling. Tell and yourself to identify everything in English. For instance, if you are visiting Barcelona, Spain, look around the name, things like buildings, bicycle, cafe, and tourist. The more you practice this, the more your brain will automatically think in English. Stage 3. Think in sentences connecting verb and nouns. Once you are comfortable thinking in verbs and nouns, it is time to move on the next step. Thinking in sentences. This is where you start putting verbs and nouns together to describe what's happening around you will in full sentences. And this stage, it is important to start simple. Don't worry about making long, complicated sentences. Just focus on creating short, clear sentences that describe what you see. For example, if you are in Cape Town, South Africa, looking at Table Mountain, you might say, the tourists are climbing the mountain. The sun is shining. The wind is blowing. These are simple, but they allow you to practice thinking in complete sentences. And now, let's imagine you are in Toronto, Canada, sitting in a park. What's happening around you? You could describe the scene like this: a family is having a picnic, the children are playing with a ball, the birds are flying in the sky. These sentences are short, but they are effectively describe what's happening around you. As you become more comfortable, you can start making your sentences longer. For example, if you are Berlin, Germany, walking near the Brandenburg Gateway, you might say a group of tourists is taking picture of the monument. Some of them are listening to their tour guide while others are checking their maps. These sentences combine multiple verbs and nouns, giving a fuller description of the scene. The goal here is to get used to thinking in sentences instead of just words. This will help you when you are speaking, as you would not have to stop and think about each individual word. Your brain will automatically form sentences in English. He practiced tip. Every day take 10 to 15 minutes to describe your surrounding in sentences. Whether you are at home, in the office, or walking through a new city, try to come from complete sentences in your head that describes what's happening. If you are in cafe and Rome, Italy, you might say the waiter is serving coffee. Two friends are chatting at the next table. A couple is reading a menu. This practice will make thinking in English such more natural. Stage 4. Think in paragraphs, bringing it all together. The final stage is to move from thinking in sentences to thinking in paragraphs. This means describing everything around you in more detail, telling a full story, or creating a more vivid picture of the scene. Imagine you are visiting the Great Wall of China. Here, how you might describe it in paragraph. I am standing on the Great Wall and view is incredible. The mountain stretched out as far as I can see, and the wall winds its way across the landscapes. There are tourists all around me taking pictures and walking around along the wall. I can hear people speaking in different language, and there is a cool breeze blowing through the air. The steps are steep and the stone is worn from centuries of use. In this paragraph, you have combined everything: verbs, walking, speaking, noun, tourist, mountain, wall, and sentence to create a full description of the scene. By practicing this, you will start thinking in English more naturally, as you would not just the forming short sentences, you will able to describe things in full detail. Let's take another example. Imagine you are walking through a bustling market in Istanbul. You might describe the scene like this: the market is filled with people all busy shopping and bargaining with the vendors. I can smell the spices in the air, and the bright colors of the rugs and textiles catch my eye. A man is selling tea from a cart, and groups of tourists are taking photos. The sound of people talking, and laughing fills the air, and the atmosphere is lively and energetic. When you practice thinking in paragraphs like this, you are training your brain to describe events and scene in full details without stopping to translate from your native language. This stage is essential because it helps you not only think in English but also express your thought in a more coherent and fluent way. By focusing on forming paragraphs, you can talk more naturally and at length, which is key when you are aiming for fluency. Let's take one more example to practice. Imagine you are sitting in a cozy cafe in Amsterdam, Netherlands. Here, how you might describe the scene in a paragraph. I am sitting at a small table by the window, sipping my cup. The cafe is warm and inviting with soft music playing in the background. Outside, I can see people riding their bicycle along the canal. The sky is cloudy and looks like it might rain soon. Inside, a few people are reading books, and our couple is chatting quietly over their breakfast. The smell of freshly baked bread fills the air, and the atmosphere is calm and peaceful. In this paragraph, you have combined all the element, verb, noun, and sentences to create a vivid picture of the scene. This is the final stage of the thinking in English, where you can describe situation in details, just as you would in your native language. Take a few minutes to describe your day in a paragraph. Start from the moment you woke up and think about everything that happened. What did you do? Where did you go? Who did you meet? Try to describe it all in English. For example, today was a busy day. I woke up early and went for a walk to the park. The weather was nice and I saw a lot of people exercising. After that, I had breakfast at a small cafe. I ordered a cappuccino and croissant. Later, I went to work and had a meeting with my team. We discussed our new project and everywhere had great ideas. In the evening, I met a friend for a dinner at a restaurant. We had a great time catching up and talking about our week. This type of daily practice will not only help you think in English but also improve your ability in recall and describe event in detail. Putting it all together, achieving fluency through practice. But now, you should have a clear understanding of the four stages of thinking in English. Think in verb, focus on action, words, and describe what is happening around you. Think in noun, naming people, place, in things you see in your surrounding. Per think in sentences, combine verbs and nouns to form short, simple sentences. Things in paragraphs. Bring everything together to create detailed description of scene and events. Each of these stages build on the previous one, helping you develop the ability to think directly in English without the need of translations. It is important to practice each stage regularly as this will train your brain to process informations in English more naturally. Why thinking in English is essential for fluency. Now that you understand the stage, let's talk about why this. When you first start learning English, you likely translate from your native language. See, this is natural, but it creates a delay in your speaking. Instead of speaking smoothly, you have to pause and think about what you say, which can feel you feel less confident. By practicing thinking in English, you eliminate that translation step. Your thoughts will in natural form in English, making your speech faster and more fluid. When you can think in English, you will also find it easier to have conversation, express your ideas, and respond quickly in discussion. For example, imagine you are at a job interview in London and the interviews to describe a challenging situation you face at work. If you are thinking in your native language, you might need a moment to translate your thoughts into English. But if you have trained yourself to think in English, you can respond immediately and confidently without hesitations. The same goes for everyday conversation, whether you are chatting with friends, giving a presentations, or even ordering food at restaurant. Being able to think in English will make the process much smoother. Practical exercise is to help you think English speaking. Now that you have learned the four stages, here are improve your English in think in English. Daily observation. Spend 10 to 15 minutes each day observing your surroundings and describing them in English. Whether you are on the bus, at the park, or walking through your neighborhood, challenge your to describe everything you see using verbs, noun, and sentences. To picture description, find a photo from a magazine website or your own photo album. Look at the picture closely and describe everything you see in English. For example, if you are looking at a picture of a beach, you could say the sand is white and the water is crystal clear. There are few people swimming and some children are building a sand castle. In the distance, I can see a boat sailing on the horizon. Cow. Write a journal. At the end of each day, write a short journal entry in English. Start by describing what you did that day, where you went, and who you meet. As you practice, try to include more details in your descriptions. B. Talk to yourself. If you don't have anyone to practice speak English with, you can practice by talking to yourself. Pick a topic and try to talk about it for a few minutes. For example, you could describe your favorite movie, explain how to make your favorite dish, or talk about your plans for the weekend. 5. Set language challenges. Challenges yourself to think in English for a short period. For example, set a timer for 5 minutes and commit to thinking only in English during that time. Gradually increase the time as you become more comfortable. Final thoughts. The road to fluency. Learning to think in English is a journey and it requires patience and practice. The more you engage with the language, the more natural it will feel to think, speak, and express yourself in English. By following the four stage verb, noun, sentence, and paragraph, you will build a strong foundation of fluency. Remember, the key to success is consistency. Practice every day, even even if it's just for a few minutes, and you will see improvement over time. It is normal to make mistakes along the way, but don't let that discourage you. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and grow. So, are you ready to take the next step on your English learning journey? Start practicing as soon as you will thinking in English like a native speaker. Thank you for joining me in today's lesson on a simple spoken English. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you would not miss any of our upcoming lesson. Keep practicing, stay curious. I will see you in the next lesson.